Question 1. The central opposition in the poem is between what and what? If you look through the poem, you'll see that the speaker says in the first line that she dreaded that first robin. Looking a little further, she says that she dared not meet the daffodils for fear their yellow gown would pierce her. And then she goes on to express the wish that the grass would hurry up and grow, seemingly to shield her from the daffodils. In line 17, she says she could not bear the bees to come, so she didn't want the bees either. These three things, the first robin, the daffodils, and the bees, are all three things that show up in the springtime, and the speaker is opposed to all of them. So a quick glance through the answers shows that the most obvious answer is A, the central opposition is between the speaker and spring. You can certainly support this answer from the poem. But let's take a look at the rest of the answers anyway. B, the birds and the flowers. The speaker talks about the first robin, and she also talks about flowers or daffodils, and she doesn't want either of them. She seems afraid of both of them, but we don't find them having any interaction with each other, which means that the birds and the flowers aren't, as far as we can tell, in opposition to each other. So we can't support this answer. C, reason and imagination. It could be that the speaker is lost in a world of imagination in this poem, but if that's the case, we never see a clear contrast with reason, and certainly not to the extent to say that reason versus imagination is the central opposition, so we can't support this answer either. D, God and nature. The speaker is clearly one half of the opposition in this poem, and nature or elements of nature make up the other half, because there's no question that the speaker is opposed to these particular elements of nature that she mentions. So to assume that God versus nature is the central opposition, you have to assume that the speaker here is God. That's a pretty big assumption, and there's only one line in the whole poem that lends itself to that possible interpretation, and that's line 24, where the speaker refers to herself as Queen of Calvary. Calvary is the site, a hill or mountain, outside of Jerusalem where Jesus Christ was crucified, and Christians consider Christ to be God. So you might think that the speaker here is equating herself with Christ, and therefore God, by referring to herself as the Queen of Calvary. But that's a bit of a stretch, since nothing else in the poem makes us think that the speaker is God. Not to mention that she calls herself the Queen of Calvary when Christ is a male, not female. And there is the fact that she's afraid of nature. She dreads the robin. She dares not meet the daffodils. She cannot bear the bees should come. Those aren't sentiments that we would typically ascribe to God, a fear of nature. So this answer, while interesting, is not as strong as A, which lets us just leave the speaker as the speaker instead of having to assume that the speaker is God. With A as a possible choice and nothing else to go on, we should probably eliminate D. And last, we have E, childhood and adulthood. It's possible you can find a metaphor for childhood in the poet's fear of nature or the coming spring, maybe a child dreading or fearing maturity. However, we can't clearly support childhood versus adulthood as the central opposition, not when we have A as an answer choice. Remember when you're taking the multiple choice part of this test that you should choose the best response from the available choices. And while you might be doing some great interpretive speculation here about what Emily Dickinson is really talking about, that would make wonderful material for an interpretive analysis essay, if you have an answer choice that is as clear-cut and supportable as A is here, you shouldn't abandon it for an iffy interpretive one. Because of that, you should eliminate E. And the clearest, most supportable answer that we have here is that the central opposition is between the speaker and spring. Question 2. The speaker views the coming of the robin, the daffodils, and the bees as what? Notice that in talking about the robin, the speaker says in line 4 that even though she's grown accustomed to him, he hurts a little. Then, when speaking about the daffodils, the speaker expresses the fear that the daffodil's yellow gown would pierce her. When she's talking about the bees, she doesn't specifically say that she's afraid they'll hurt her, but she does say in line 18 that she wished they'd stay away. And if she's afraid that the robin or the daffodil might hurt her, you might infer that she would have the same fear of creatures equipped with stingers. At any rate, based on all this, we can quickly eliminate anything that seems positive. For example, we can eliminate A, inspiring occurrences, as she indicates that she is afraid of these arrivals. We can also get rid of C, welcome arrivals, for the same reason. She doesn't welcome them. B, inexplicable events. She doesn't really try to explain the events, but there's no indication that she feels she can't explain them, that she considers their arrival to be inexplicable. She certainly expects their arrival, even dreads it, so we can eliminate D, unexpected diversions. And that leaves us with E, painful experiences, which, even though she doesn't specifically associate pain with the bees, she does associate pain with both the robin and the daffodils, and we can infer the same about the bees, which makes this the most supportable answer of our choices. So the best response is E, painful experiences. Question 3. The first shout in line 6 most probably refers to what? So let's read through the lines leading up to this and those immediately after it to get the context. I dreaded that first robin so, but he is mastered now. I'm accustomed to him grown. He hurts a little, though. I thought if I could only live till that first shout got by, not all pianos in the woods had power to mangle me. And as we're reading this, wondering why she dreaded the robin, she implies for us why she dreaded him. It's because she thought he would hurt her. He still hurts her, she tells us, even though she's gotten used to him. She tells us that she thought that if she could just live until the first shout got by, then not all the pianos in the woods had or would have power to mangle or hurt her. Based on this, it seems that the thing she dreaded about the robin is his noise, the sound he makes. It's a shout, according to her. And the rest of the birds, pianos, as she metaphorically refers to them, would not be able to hurt her if she could just get past the first shout. So, the first shout most probably refers to A, the robin's song. This is a well-supported answer, but we'll look at the rest anyway. B, the dawn of a new day. There isn't anything here that we can use to tie the first shout with the dawn of a new day. For one thing, everything in the context here is about birds as far as we can tell. And for another, there isn't any reasonable analogous connection between the dawn of a new day and a shout. Dawning of a new day isn't typically considered loud, etc. So there's no obvious support for this answer as there is for A. C, the sprouting of a flower. If you examine the structure of Dickinson's poem, you'll see that the speaker hasn't gotten to talking about the flowers yet in this line. Notice that she prefaces each of the 3 elements of spring with which she has an issue with a line announcing her trepidation or reluctance to face it. Line 1, I dreaded that first robin so, and then she goes on to talk about the robin and birds. Then line 9, she says, I dare not meet the daffodils, and proceeds for 8 lines to talk about the daffodils and how she hoped to avoid them. Then she introduces the bees, line 17. I could not bear the bees should come. After 4 lines about the bees, she begins talking about all of them as a group. But the point here is that in line 6, she hasn't yet begun talking about flowers. She's still on the birds, so this isn't a good answer. Now, it's true that when you're trying to answer this question, this is part of what you're deciding, what's she actually saying here. How do you know, you may ask, when you're trying to work it out, that she's not talking about flowers yet? Well, again, one thing is that this answer suffers from the same problem as B, with nothing in the context to make us think that a shout is meant to represent a flower sprouting, and with no clear analogous connection between a flower and a shout. Flowers aren't loud, for example. Flowers don't have a voice. We can't make the leap required to choose this answer. The poem just doesn't support it. D, a cry made by the speaker. This doesn't fit the context because she says that I thought if I could only live till that first shout got by, and if she had been the one shouting, she probably would have known whether or not she could live through it. There's nothing here that we can use to support this response, so we should eliminate it. And last of all, E, a baby's first cry. There's absolutely nothing in this whole poem to lead us to believe that this is a baby's cry. And the best response is still A, the robin's song. Question 4. In line 7, pianos most probably refers metaphorically to what? We already touched on this earlier, so you doubtless know the answer if you didn't before, but we'll take a look at it anyway. A, bees. Looking back at the structure of the poem as we outlined it earlier, The speaker doesn't begin talking about bees until line 17, and there isn't a clear analogy that we can draw between bees and pianos anyway. Bees buzz, but they don't make music. They're not huge and heavy. They don't have keys. There really isn't anything obvious enough to lead us to the conclusion that the pianos here are bees. We can't support this answer. B, poetry. It's hard to imagine what connection the speaker could be making between poetry and pianos in the woods. We don't have any reason to think this answer is correct. C, birds. As we saw before, this is strongly supported not only by its place within the structure of this poem as the speaker is talking about the robin hurting her, but also because the analogy, while unusual, is still strong and apropos of the point she's making. Pianos make music, so do birds. Pianos can be loud, so can birds. The speaker says that the robin hurt her, and she referred to his song as a shout. She expressed the hope or the belief that all the pianos in the woods wouldn't have the power to mangle her, which ties in with her saying that the robin hurt her and leads us to believe that she means that if she could just get past the pain of the robin's shout, the rest of the birds, the pianos, wouldn't be able to hurt her or mangle her like he did. So this is a well-supported answer. D, musical instruments. There's no place in the context of this poem for there to be literal pianos in the woods, and the question asks what pianos metaphorically refers to. So we can't support this answer. E, flowers. This, again, like an earlier choice involving flowers, doesn't take into account the way the speaker has structured the poem. She isn't talking about flowers yet. Additionally, there isn't a clear analogous connection we can make here between flowers and pianos. Flowers don't make noise, they don't make music, they're not heavy, etc. So this answer is insupportable too, and the best answer is still C, birds. Question 5. For the speaker, the robin and the daffodil have which of the following in common? Remember where our sections are. Here we have the speaker talking about the robin, and here we have her talking about the daffodils, and here are the bees for good measure. Based on the work we've already done, you probably know this answer too, but let's go through the choices. A sense of timelessness and peace. There is certainly not peace in dreading something or in not daring to meet something, which indicates fear rather than peace. Also, she's grown accustomed to the robin, and she wishes the grass would hurry and grow, probably to shield her from the daffodils. And those ideas indicate the passage of time rather than timelessness, so this answer can't be supported. B, a clear and useful purpose. The speaker doesn't indicate any clear and useful purpose for either the robin or the daffodils, so we can't support this answer either. C, an aura of the divine. There is no indication of the speaker feeling that the dreaded robin or the piercing daffodils have an aura of the divine or godlikeness, so this answer is insupportable. D, the power to wound. The speaker says in line 4 that the robin still hurts a little, and in lines 10 and 11, she expresses her fear that the daffodils would pierce her. So D is a very supportable answer. E, the power to intoxicate. There's nothing here to support this. She dreaded the robin, she feels fear about the possibility that the daffodils will pierce her, so she doesn't seem to be in any way intoxicated, either with excitement or anything else. And the best answer is still D, the power to wound. Question 6. One effect of "they're here though" in line 21 is to emphasize the speaker's feeling of what? Notice that this comes after the speaker has expressed her dread of the robin, her fear of the daffodils, and her wish that the bees had stayed away. "They're here though," she says, "not a creature stayed away." In spite of her wishes to the contrary, all these elements of nature or spring showed up. So it's very easy to support that this emphasizes her feelings of A, powerlessness. These things come in spite of her, and she is powerless to stop them. A is a very easily supported answer. B, justification. To be justified is to be shown or proved to be right, and the speaker isn't asserting that the robin, the daffodils, and the bees are coming. She takes the fact that they're coming for granted and asserts that they will hurt her or that their coming is bad in some way. So when she says "they're here though," this isn't emphasizing a feeling of justification, because just because they showed up doesn't mean that she was right all along. If she said "they hurt me just like I said they would," That would emphasize a feeling of justification, but that's not what the line says, so this is not a supportable answer. C, guilt. This can't be the correct response because the speaker doesn't indicate that she has feelings of guilt to emphasize. She has dread and fear and a desire for these elements of nature or spring to stay away, but no guilt. So this answer is insupportable. D, hopefulness. She dreads, fears, and wishes that they would all stay away, so when she observes that in spite of all that, they're here though, this hardly indicates hopefulness. This is like the last response. The speaker doesn't have a sense of hopefulness to emphasize, so this answer is incorrect. E, contentment. The same applies to this answer. We have seen that the speaker dreads, is fearful, wishes things to stay away, so she is not content, and therefore there is no feeling of contentment to be emphasized. And the only supportable answer is A, powerlessness.